Hello and welcome to the next session of IronPython in Spotfire. Today we will see how to access a panel in Spotfire. If you remember the earlier topics that we discussed, in which we saw how to access a page in a Spotfire analysis, we first got a reference to the document, which is your Spotfire analysis you are working on, and then the page, because page is a part of your analysis. So the hierarchy followed is document and then the page. That is why you write document.page. Now this page can be a page at a particular index, the page at a particular index, or the current page that you are working on. That is document.activePageReference. So the hierarchy followed is document and then the page. So to access a component, we always follow a hierarchy. Similarly, to access a panel, we will also follow a hierarchy. You can see here that details on demand panel is lying on a page. This is residing on a page. So you can consider it as a part of a page. So to access the details on demand panel on a page, you first get the reference to that page and then the panel. That is the details on demand panel or filter panel. So the hierarchy followed will be the page. This is the page till here, it's the page, and then the panel. If it's a filter panel, we write filter panel. If it's a details on demand panel, we will write details on demand panel. We will say this later. So the hierarchy followed will be the page and then the panel. Now let me draw your attention to the Spotfire API here. Let's open 10.3. You can look up 10.10 also. Okay, so details on demand resides on a page, so it is related to the page. Let's delve into page class. Properties. If you go through the properties of the page class, you would see that details on demand panel is a property of the page class. Hence, you can write page object, which is your page, dot details on demand panel. This is how we access the property of an object, right? First, you get the object of a class, and then you access the properties defined in that class through the object of that class. So here our class is page class, object is the page, which is your page at a particular index or the current page, followed by the property page dot details on demand panel, page dot filter panel, page dot id, page dot panels, page dot title, page dot visuals. So you can see details on demand panel is a property, filter panel is also a property of the page class. So we can write page dot filter panel or page dot details on demand panel. That's how you access the details on demand panel or filter panel. Let's see how we write in IronPython. Okay, so you first get the reference of the page on which you want to access the panel. So I don't see any reason to access the panel on some other page other than the current page. So let's get a reference to the current page and work on that. So I got the reference of the current page. This is how you get the reference to the current page. First you get the reference to the document, which is the Spotfire analysis, our DXP, and then this active page reference, which is a property of that document. Just to recap, if you go to document class, go to properties, there is a property called active page reference, which returns a reference to the current page. So here document is also an object. So this DXP which we are working on is an object of the document class. So we headed over to document class to see what all properties and methods we can use with the object of this document class. And our object of the document class is none other than this DXP that we are working on. So we write document.activePageReference to get the reference to the current page. Now this contains the reference to the current page. Now we are storing it into a variable called page. So we will be accessing the current page using this variable page. Now let's see how to access the panel. So we just saw details on demand panel is a property of the page class. Here, details on demand panel is a property of the page class. So syntactically we can write like this. The spelling should be correct. Details on demand. So this is how we will access the details on demand panel on the current page. Now if you print this, it won't serve any purpose, but if you print this, just it is returning an object of type details on demand panel. That means this details on demand panel is an object of class or of type details on demand panel. In fact, every class is a type, data type, derived type, user defined type, if you remember the concepts of object oriented programs. Anyway, so this is how you access details on demand panel. Now let's get back to our details on demand panel. When I select this, I see, okay, this is of type details on demand panel. It returns some value of type details on demand panel. Okay, type details on demand panel. Now click on this. Now what does it return? It returns the properties or methods that we can use with this details on demand panel. If you remember the page class, what we did, first we selected the page class, clicked on a property, or we selected a page object and then clicked on the page class. I mean to say, suppose we go to page class. Suppose you go to document class and you clicked on active page reference. Okay, what does it return? It returns a value of type page. Now you want to check what all properties you can use with this active page reference, with this page type object that it is returning. You click on type page class, because this is an object. This is an object and the class, that is the type, is page. So we will check what all properties and methods are defined in this class page, because that's how you access the properties and methods in a class, that is through its object, and the object is this. Now you click on page, it takes you to the page class, and here you can see the properties that you can access with page object. So just now I showed that details on demand panel is a property of the page object. Okay, so since it's a property of the page object, we can write this property like this. We can access this property like this: page and then details on demand panel. Suppose you wanted to access the details on demand panel on page 3, then you could have written like this. Sorry. Document.pages, page 3, that is 2. Our indexing page index starts from 0, and then you could write page 3 dot details on demand. Okay, so this will return the details on demand panel object on page 3. But what will you do with that object? you need to know the properties and methods which you can put to use. So just like a page, we will head over to details on demand class to check what all properties and methods we can use with details on demand panel. So if you click on this property, page class, okay. So if you click on this details on demand panel property and you see the definition, okay, it is returning of type details on demand panel. Now to check what all methods and properties we can use with this details on demand panel, we'll click on this type details on demand panel. Okay, these are the properties which we can use. The most commonly used property is visible when you want to toggle a details on demand panel. Title will return the name of the panel, the title of the panel. You can try. Okay, so let's try this out. Visible property. Let's print this visible property. So this is returning what? The reference to the details on demand panel on the current page. So let's store this reference to another variable which is not needed, but let's store it. Panel. Now we can write panel dot visible. Okay, you could have written this in one line: application dot document dot active page reference excuse me, dot details on demand panel dot visible. Okay, let's print this. Okay, let's get back to this property. Okay, when we click on this property visible, let's see its definition. Its return type is bool, which is boolean, just true or false. Get and set, that means you can set the visible property of this panel also. That means you can change also. You can change this visible property also. Okay, bool. So if the panel is, let's first print it true. That means the visible property of the panel is true. That means the panel is visible, and you can see that the panel is added to our analysis. That is why the visible property is true. Okay, let's close this panel. Okay, I'm closing this panel and I'll run this again. Now let's print this visible property. Now it is false because this panel is now hidden. Now we just saw the definition of this property. It is get and set to. That means you can change the property to. So if it is false, you can set it to true. If it is true, you can set it to false. Because that's what you will do. Not set to true if it is already true, or not to false if it is already false. That doesn't make sense. Okay, let's set the property visible. False. Okay, so when we run this script, first it will start from here, and then first it will print the current property, visible property of the panel, whether it is true or false, and then it will set the visible property to false. I'm sorry, it is already hidden, so let's set it to true. Okay, so why we got false here? Because when the code runs at that time, before reaching this statement, the details on demand was hidden. That is why till here it printed false. After that we set the visible property to true, and when the visible property was set to true, the panel became visible in the background. Okay, let's comment this on. You can use this visible property to toggle the visibility of this details on demand panel. You can write like this: if panel dot visible double equals true, panel dot visible equal to false. That means if this panel is visible, if it should get hidden when this button is clicked, toggle panel. Okay, so let's run this script. See, it got hidden, but now it is hidden. So at this point, the visible property of the panel will return false. That's what we set it here. So let's print this visible property. Sorry for the background barking noise. False, because the panel is hidden, the visible property is returning false, but we want it to be back visible again when this button is clicked. So we can write another condition that if it is hidden, make it visible, because at that time the visible property will return false. So currently the visible property is false, as we just saw. Or else panel dot visible equal to true. That means if it is visible, it should get hidden when this button is clicked, and when it is hidden, it should become visible back again when this button is clicked. Let's run this code and see. Now it is back visible again. You can write this in another way also. There could be many ways to write this logic. You can write like this also: panel dot visible equal to. So you can see here, whenever the visible property is true, we are setting it to false, and whenever it is false, we are setting it to true. So we can write this in one statement also. This should also work. Okay. That means if the visible property is true, it will change to not true, that is false, and if the visible property is false, it will change to not false, which is true. Let's try this. Okay, now it got hidden. Let's click it again. Now it is visible back again. So you can write in this manner also. Okay, so just to recap, whenever you access a component, you also always follow a hierarchy. Just like for pages, you follow the same hierarchy, you follow the same method for accessing a panel. That is, you first access a particular page and then the panel on that page. Like we did here, first we got a reference to that page and then the panel on that page. Similarly, you can access filter panel also. Okay, let's store the reference to filter panel to this variable f panel equal to page dot filter panel. You can see here filter panel is also a property of the page class. That means it is also a property of the page object. That means we can access this property through the object of the page class, which is either our active page or a page at a particular index. Page dot filter panel. Let's print it f panel. Okay, it returned value of that filter panel. Now similarly, you can set the visible property or any other property which is relevant to this filter panel class. Let's see what all properties are applicable to this. So let's click on filter panel property. It returns a value of type filter panel. So let's head over to this type. Okay, so these are the properties. okay, which are applicable to a filter panel. We'll see these later. Similarly, it has a visible property just like our details on demand panel. Let's print visible property. Okay, so filter panel is not visible, that is why its visible property is false. If uh, if we add a filter panel, now if we run this, it will return true. It will print 2. I'm sorry, I think we lost that script. Oh, panel is equal to page dot print f panel true. This one, because this is now visible. We have added the filter panel to this page. Okay, let's save this first. If you go to this filter panel or details on demand panel, you see there is a property called docking placement. You can try it later. So it lets you position the panel at a particular region in your page. It could be top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. You can explore this property and see how it is used. Okay, it returns a value of type docking placement. Now let's see what all properties are related to associated with this docking placement. Let's go to docking placement. Okay, you see it's a constructor, so you need to write panel, that is the details on demand panel, dot docking placement is equal to docking placement. You have to call that constructor with a pair of parentheses, something like that. You can try this out, you can explore it on your own. Okay, so this was about filter panel or details on demand panel. One thing I would like to draw your attention to is we have one data panel also, which is the data panel. Data panel. Okay, this is the data panel. So suppose you want to access this data panel, how will you access? You would say that okay, this is also located on a page, so we will access the page and then the details panel. If that is the case, then details on just like details on demand panel, this data panel should also be a property of the page class, shouldn't be? We have if you go to page class, we have page properties, we have details on demand property, filter panel property. We should be having some data panel property also, but we don't have. Okay, so we can't write page dot data panel, it will throw an error, we'll get an error message. So how do we access that? How we access the data panel? I don't think we will be needing this, but still, if you want to know how to access, you can make use of another property. Okay, so page class has another property called panels, through which you can loop through the panels on a page. For example, when you suppose you want to loop through the pages in a document, what do you write? For page in page or any other variable, for page in document dot pages. Similarly, to loop through the panels on a particular page, you write for p or panel in a particular page dot panels, like this. suppose I want to loop through the panels on this page. I will write for panel in page dot panels like this, print panel. Let's see what it prints. I'm sorry. Okay, so page is our active page, current page. So this is how you loop through the panels. Let's print. Okay, it is returning one filter panel, one details on demand panel, one data panel. Okay, let's try to access the data panel on this page. Page contains the current page, data panel. See, page object has no attribute data panel. What does it mean? Page object has no property called data panel. That's what we saw here. Data panel is not listed as a property of the page class. That is why we cannot use data panel directly, just like details on demand panel or filter panel. Okay, so to access this data panel, we make use of another property, which is the type ID. So every panel has a type ID that stores what a value which denotes the type of the panel it is. This is the okay. So this is returning as a collection of panels. Okay, just like pages, collection of pages. This is returning a collection of panels. So we will go to panel class, not the panels class. We'll go to panel class because one by one it is referring to one panel. So you can see every panel has a type ID property. Okay, so it returns a value of type identifier. Let's see what it prints. Dot type ID. Okay, so it returns type identifier filter panel. So one panel is of type filter panel, another one is of type details on demand panel, and the third one is of type data panel. So suppose you want to access data panel for some reason, you can write like this: for panel in page dot panels, if panel dot type ID is equal to, let's go back to type ID. See, type identifier. Okay, so basically this is a class from which another class called panel type identifiers inherits. Okay, this is the base class and that is the derived class. I'll quickly take you to that class. Panel type is the base class. This one, panel type identifiers class. Okay, so this lies under Spotfire.dxp.application. So to use this class, to use the properties of methods or fields are nothing, just the variables which are defined in a class. So if you look at look back at the object-oriented programming, you have at fields or variables, methods or properties defined in a class. So just like you access a method using the object of a class or a property of a class using the object of a class, you can access the fields of a class using the object of the class. Object dot that field name, that is object dot that variable name. Okay, So panel type identifiers is a class. Panel type identifiers fields. Let's go to this fields. You can consider it as a property. Okay, so these are the fields where you have data panel field. So you can access. So how do you access this data panel field? It is of type panel type identifiers class, and you see, okay, all of them are static. As is written, I believe that means yeah, static members. So if you remember, static members are those members which can be directly accessed using the class. You did not have an object to access those members. This concept applies to member as well as the method. When I say member, I mean field or a variable, simple variable. So static members or static methods or functions of a class can be accessed using the class name directly. You did not have to you did not create an object of that class to access those members or functions. That is the static members or static functions. So we can directly write panel. This is the class name, panel type identifiers, panel type identifiers. So we can directly access this data panel, panel type identifiers dot data panel, just like we accessed one enumeration, if you remember, with page, when we were setting the type of navigation in an analysis. Okay, so we can write like this, panel type identifiers. And how do you access the members or functions or properties of a class? The class name, that is the object name dot that member name, but here our member is a static member, so we can directly access that member using the class name. So that's why we have written the class name directly here, panel type identifiers dot data panel. Then let's print data panel count. Okay. Let's print this. I'm sorry. I must okay. Yeah, this is an important point here I would like to draw your attention to. So till now we were not importing any namespace here, okay, but here you see, and we were not receiving any errors. So as I had told you earlier in my last session, to access some of the components you need not import any namespace, they get imported by default. But panel type identifiers mention is reporting an error that it is not defined. That means we will have to import the namespace in which this class is defined. And what is that namespace? Spotfire.dxp.application. From Spotfire.dxp.application import star. Let's import all the classes. Okay, data panel form, because there was a data panel. So I don't think you will be needing to access this data panel. I just showed you how to access this data panel. Now you can do anything with this. You can count, or you can get the page on which, locate the page on which data panel is located, position. Otherwise it is you won't find any use, concrete use of this data panel. You will be dealing only with details on demand panel and filter panel. So this is what I had about panels. I'll see you in the next session. Thank you.